One of the things you and I love to do is have a healthy debate. By the way, we do this privately, we do this publicly, we fight in public like a couple. We love to squabble. I usually say, let's just take it out on the bench, but then Pat always says no for whatever reason. I don't know why you never want to do that with me. But one of these days. Right, buddy? You're going to do it? We're going to do it? No, we're not going to do it because we don't want to get injured anymore. We're old men, Pat. Put the ego aside. Stay healthy. Keep your together. Healthy. You need to be able to hold that baby.
Founder and CEO of More Insights and Strategy, Patrick Moorhead.
6, 5.
CEO of the Futurum Group,
Daniel Newman.
6, 5.
Do we know what we're talking about, Moorhead?
We absolutely know what we're talking about.
All right, we are back. It's another week, tons of news, episode 275. Pat, can you believe we've been doing this for 275 weeks, bringing it each and every week, whether we're sick, whether we're tired, whether we're in a foreign country or we are enjoying a beautiful vacation somewhere mountainous with our family, giving little snuggles to our grandbabies. Did you do anything on that list today so far, Mr. Moorhead?
Possibly. I took one of those not vacations. I sometimes have these visions of grandeur, which are, I'm just going to unplug and chill. I mean, I probably worked half the time. I guess if you include doom scrolling on tech in bed at 4 a.m., then probably 6 or 7 hours a day. So, but you know what? I'm just glad that 6 or 7 hours is better than 12 hours. So I'm going to count that as an absolute win. No, I'm here in Snowmass, chilling. It's good, man. Seeing my grandson, it's just so amazing.
With the baby boy. Thank God he's pretty like your wife and daughters. Doesn't look anything like you. But maybe as he gets older, he'll get your jacked figure. He'll be gorgeous. So I hear a rumor that you're sort of back to part of being on vacation and recharging. Generally comes with great workouts. Are you at least getting the killer workouts in with the little extra time you have?
Daniel, I'm absolutely crushing it in the gym again. Feeling pretty good about things. I'm not 100% on anything that has to deal with my midsection because my surgery, I want to give it a couple more weeks on that. But I would say, upper body and leg machines, I'm 100% and seeing gains like crazy. So yeah, the great thing about declining is that, you have an on-ramp coming back. And, it is funny. I published that second year health journey, third year, what's going to happen. And I got absolutely nobody's interested in it.
Like I said, you're too healthy now. You need to get fat again and start over. People will love it. You're like, I succeeded, then I failed, then I succeeded. Because by the way, people only like you becoming so successful, then you cross the line and they're like, nah, I don't want none of that, Moorhead. You're looking too good. You're looking too damn good. You're too successful. You're too smart. You're on TV too often. You're just too much of the man. Speaking of being the man, what a week. Wow. Big antitrust. I mean, I really thought coming off of the Nvidia week that there'd be like a little bit of a cool down. I knew that Broadcom was reporting and there were some other tech names coming out this week, but I just thought like that was kind of the peak and then we get a cool down. But we didn't get much of a cool down this week. We had major antitrust rulings. We had Trump and Mrs. The First Lady having a whole dinner table full of people, many that we actually know, Pat, which is pretty cool. Like we're like only one step removed now from being invited to the White House for dinner. Get that? Hear that? Pat and I would like to come. There was more rumors, FUD rumors. I don't know, mostly FUD these days. If it comes from the information, you got to ask a question. Sometimes they're right. I don't know. Salesforce CEO talks about cutting jobs because of the power of agents. Company also reported this week. We'll hit on that a little bit. And there was a little sniping, by the way, going back and forth with him and Alex Karp. That was quite amusing. And Microsoft extends its tools. And of course, Satya came out as one of the first to support the President Trump's AI agenda. God, we have a pro-AI White House, don't we? I mean, policy aside, the White House is all in on leading the world in AI. We got that. We got a flip, another controversial simulated argument that we're going to make. Pat's going to probably win. He always wins. Um, I don't believe that, in case anyone heard that whisper. And then we've got a bunch of really interesting market updates. I got a lot of victory laps to take today. I'm going to find a way to cue those in, and hopefully they've figured out a way to cue in the victory lap bell. I've just been on fire lately, Pat. Batting a
Are you
thousand.
tired, Daniel Newman? Are you tired of winning?
I'm
That's what I
feeling
want to know.
exhausted of winning, but it's kind of like, if I really could break it down for everybody, it feels like there's a lot of winning and a lot of losing at the same time. Winning in categories that don't matter that much and losing in the ones that do.
Stop talking about me like that, Daniel.
No,
That's
it's not you, man.
mean.
It's not you. This is a we thing. We're in this together. This is a we thing. It's just it's like being right on X about something, but then you know, missing huge targets that I've set for myself in really important areas over and over again. So, but I did make a bet with somebody that I could get to 405, by the way, on the bench before they'll get to 315. So it's a big bet. And by the way, I've never gotten close to 405. I've been high threes, but when you get over that weight, every pound starts to feel like a kilo.
Best to be
So,
careful. Be
yeah.
careful.
Well, I'm not even going to try it till I'm doing 6-7 reps at 375. I'm gonna get a long way before I'm gonna even take that stab because we've both seen what an injury can do. It sets you back, but not only does it set you back physically, it sets you back mentally, and that's the bigger thing. You got to stay clear in the head, and missing those workouts is an absolute killer. But Pat, we got a long docket. We want to get through everything for the audience. Thanks everybody for joining us. Let's get to the decode. All right, Pat. I know I was pounding the table for a long time about Google. Great play, great AI name. This antitrust stuff is not that big of a deal. They're not going to get broken up. A ruling came out this week. Did they get broken up?
It's amazing. I mean, this was the biggest nothing burger I've ever seen in my life in terms of antitrust, right? Essentially, this was the remedy phase, and this is where the hammer was going to be dropped, the company was going to be split, and browser would be sold off, but absolutely none of that. There was a lot of Google news this week, but first and foremost, the judge ruled that Google is a search monopoly, but narrowed the remedies to really a data sharing with its competitors. It bars exclusive deals, which I can't believe they got away with that in the first place, and there wasn't like an immediate injunction. So I think the other thing that was interesting is typically, you know, well, actually, I've criticized the antitrust people for looking into the future and pretending they know what's going on, but I guess this time it probably made sense where the court actually brought up generative AI as a as a competitive force, and reducing right the appetite for any structural type of remedies. I think the biggest winner of this is probably Apple, because not only can they keep getting their just incredible money from Google, but also, they could, if somebody decides they want to pay more for a certain lineup, an i17 type of lineup, then they could give that to OpenAI, or they could give it to DuckDuckGo, or they could do to Mozilla or something like that. So it's browser and its search. One thing that really didn't get picked up a lot was that Google's Adtech fine was delayed, given all the discussions between the different countries and all of the antitrust and tariff types of conversations. So yeah, this ended up just being a just big nothing burger.
Well, we all like a big, delicious nothing burger from time to time, don't we? There's been a few others, like that rumor about Nvidia subcontracting services back to one of the clouds to use its own GPUs, making that seem like that was a big round tripping deal when in actuality they're not a cloud provider and they need capacity and they need managed services and they need anyways. point is that this is like the media loves these kinds of stories. They love to try to take down tech. They want AI to be a failure. I don't know why. I don't know why we want that so badly right now. It's not. But I here's the biggest thing, Pat, of what I was sort of thinking with this whole Google situation is that this is old. This is a last generation technology. This was like some of the things that we've seen in the past, but like breaking them up now as we head into the generative era, it's like, who cares? I mean, search isn't going to be the same. And like within a few years, generative and search engine optimization is going to be completely different. The advantages that Google has are going to be completely different. The companies could be completely different. And the only thing that was really critical was the data, and they have to share data. So that was the one ruling that came out of it was the sharing of the data, and that sharing of the data is going to give more power to creating competition in the future of generative search. So I think as a whole, this remedy was pretty right on with what's going on. So I think I support it. And the market was very pleased. I think it ran like 10% on this news. Um, I did want to quickly touch on another Google item with you, get your take, is this Google TPU thing. Supposedly they're reaching out to some smaller neo clouds and cloud providers, potentially offering TPU in the cloud for external use cases and workloads. We've talked a lot about internal, that they're doing a lot of their own training, Pat, but like I think I saw you had a couple of opinions on this. What's your read on that one?
Yeah, so with Intel moving out with Gaudi and none of the other XPUs really getting a foothold in the enterprise or even in neo clouds aside from let's say G42 with Cerebrus and Grok, I think it makes perfect sense. And I've been, what's the right word? Lobbying all companies involved to dig deeper into that, right? It's not the Swiss Army knife, meaning you can't go in and run every single application, but what you can do is if you have a very, I would say, open industry standard interface that you want to use, it's actually a really good solution. And if you're going to do inference, I mean, I've been very clear with this nonstop, and I know there's this whole idea of tokenomics, but um, all things equal, in the long run, having an XPU will be more efficient to run inference on than a GPU architecture. If you disagree with me, then give me the evidence and give me the proof on that specifically. And I also think that these are smaller models that are being run, not the larger models. I'm even hearing that they're going to take this all the way directly to the largest enterprises out there as well, which I find a lot more interesting, to be honest, than some of the neo clouds or the smaller cloud providers.
Look, this is going to be the big test of the moat too. We've talked a ton about the Nvidia moat. We know that the largest cloud and LLM companies, there's a lot of flexibility in the Nvidia stack. There's a lot of developers. We know that companies want to build on it. We know a lot of big companies want to train on it. But we also know there's this kind of secondary narrative about Microsoft and Amazon and everyone doing their own chips, and they're doing it. In my opinion, it's not because I think they want to have more control and flexibility to build their apps their way, giving them sort of unique differentiation in the future. But I also think a lot of it just has to come down with economics. The dollars of it is like they can build a custom. They can once they can map it and optimize it, their costs go down substantially. And that is going to be the mission because if they're going to keep spending capex like this, if they can do the capex on their platform versus a different platform, it creates higher ROI. And they also obviously can get benefits on things like R&D and the development side of this stuff that they can't get when they're using a third party. So I do think these things can succeed in parallel. I do think there's a little bit of this zero-sum thinking that's problematic. But this is going to sort of test the market. We're going to see if there's if there's scale and adoption. If anything, that's probably a little bit more of a challenge for Intel, whether they can get Gaudi into market at any scale, and it's a little bit of a challenge for AMD because AMD has been kind of trying to play the second card. And if Google proves that there's another alternative that has flexibility, software development, and that could end up being a little bit of a challenge for that second chair that I really have said and have thought for the longest time that should be AMD.
Dana, the most compelling thing to me, can you imagine TPU plus Gemini plus Vertex AI on-prem at an enterprise? We already have Gemini running on. We already have Gemini running on-prem at with Dell infrastructure, and we have bits and pieces of Vertex AI running on that same stack. But I think it'd be pretty freaking compelling because nobody has the entire stack, right? You would have to have a VMware or Red Hat AI platform. Then you would need to find a data platform, and with Vertex AI, it's all built in. So again, the cloud guys' reticence to bring anything on-prem, I get because it kind of breaks their operational structural advantage, but I could also see them cleaning up in the enterprise as well.
Yeah, well, you've seen them sort of heading that way, so there's definitely an opportunity that they'll continue to head that way. All right, let's jump down the docket here a little bit. So, last night, First Lady Melania Trump hosted a bevy of executives from the tech industry. From Sundar and Zuck and Lisa Su at AMD to Sonny Madra from Grok. So we saw Chamath there. So you've definitely got this broad audience of both kind of tech executives and leaders, as well as kind of thought leaders and investors and capital allocators in the space. To me, this is mostly more validation of the administration's significant commitment to leading the world in AI. I think that we're seeing this continued investment, this continued sort of outward narrative. Interesting to see Satya. Lisa was on. I saw her commenting on CNBC, but just kind of this overall sentiment that the tech industry and the Trump administration seem to be very aligned on the fact that going fast, aggressive, a lot of deregulation, pushing forward with AI is going to be critical for leading the world in the space. So I don't know that this deserves a ton of time here, but I do think it's very interesting to see the White House continue to put its thumb on the scale that we are going to be the world's leading developer and creator of AI solutions and services.
Yeah, I don't get the timing, to be honest, other than Trump doing a victory lap, being able to do a victory lap. Actually, he asked CEOs around the room to have a comment, and yeah, so he got his own built-in victory laps. But I think we'll figure out. There were probably a lot of good side conversations, a lot of lobbying on both sides. Biggest irony to me is that we still, part of the AI plan, there is no talk about Foundry IP, and that is the biggest miss. And I'm going to start. I'm going to start dialing up the rhetoric on all my channels until I see something come out of that.
Well, there you have it. And there you have it. So, Pat, another rumor that came out this week or comment was that there was a comment that, H100, 200 is not available. Nvidia, I think, just probably fatigued with all the FUD lately. This one, they just came head out and said this isn't true. That basically H100s, 200s are available and those that need them. Now, love to get your comment on this. And of course, some people are saying, well, who's buying these things?
No, I mean, listen, there is a lot of usefulness, even though Jensen right before the last GTC, or actually at the last GTC that you and I both attended, he essentially said there's no value in H200s, right? But the reality is the H200s can do an incredible amount of work. I mean, quite frankly, they're still cranking out frontier models left and right. The latest models from OpenAI, the latest models from X, all were trained on H series GPUs. So yeah, there's a ton of need for that. And then if you look at smaller models, if you look at actually running the inference of the applications that you've run, those are the people that are buying these. And listen, I think I think this has a lot to do with the stock trade, meaning people are creating rumors of anything that will drive the Nvidia stock down. But it really was good to see Nvidia just say, no, this is not an issue. I wish more companies would do this, just directly come out. I do understand the difference between they don't want to put fire on the they don't put gasoline on the flames to make an even bigger issue than it is. But having 200 articles speculating and the stock dropping, I think more companies should do this and just post stuff out there on X.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's, I'll just basically very quickly add on this one that, there just seems to be a lot of desire between China's working very hard right now to create a lot of uncertainty path. There was like 7 different headlines this week that, and by the way, if I can just say it to everybody out there, just cut the crap that everything is about replacing Nvidia. This is a massively growing market that has lots of needs. Everything won't be Nvidia. And by the way, even that 5 or 10% of the TAM of total TAM that's custom is, you're talking hundreds of billions by the end of the decade. It's not always about replacing. In some cases, there will be alternatives. In some cases, there will be needs and solutions. There will be things at the edge. There will be things on device. There will be, benefits of lower power accelerators and different architectures and FPGAs. The headline that everything is out to replace NVIDIA. And by the way, a new chip from Alibaba that, I know they've done one chip before, which if I'm not mistaken, Pat, was a failure. They're not going to suddenly become, software competitive. AMD's been trying this for years now. Broadcom's been working at it for 7+ generations with Google to finally have something competitive. Amazon's still battling an uphill fight to make their hardware easy and usable for Anthropic and other things that they're trying to do. Why do we think that every Chinese company that comes out with a 1st-generation chip is going to instantly be able to compete? It's mind-numbing to me. It needs to stop. All right, let's jump over to Salesforce. Their CEO, Mark Benioff, said, thanks to agentic AI, they're going to cut 4,000 service jobs. So we'll talk a little more about their results when we get to bulls and bears. But this is interesting because when he first came out with Agentforce, he was going to hire 2,000 more salespeople to sell Agentforce, which, by the way, I thought was super weird. Like, if you've got this incredible agentic product, you probably are going to confuse the market with why you would need to hire so many salespeople to sell it. If it was so
Yeah, if nothing else, it was bad timing. So
it was awkward to me at the very least. So now we're getting efficiency. But Pat, I mean, here's the thing. It's funny. Like, I share some thoughts. There was a Stanford report that came out this week about, young people really struggling to find work. And then, of course, we saw that MIT thing. You and I talked about it last week a little bit here on the pod. Now you've got companies like Salesforce cutting. Microsoft has been cutting. Yeah, you are hearing a lot across the tech space about the implementation of physical AI, the implementation of agentic AI, and either hiring kind of freezes, like we're not going to hire more. I think even ServiceNow said they're going to stop adding, which, their CEO, Bill McDermott, has been the most bullish about this revolution being a growth and more employees. And they've said they're going to probably slow down, if not completely stop adding. So we are seeing this. This is probably one of the most interesting challenges in the economy is as we're still trying to fight temper inflation, is the fact that the job market is going to get harder and AI is the reason. I share stuff about this from time to time. People get really angry with me. I do not care. I am 100% right on this. I'm 105% right that this is the case. I'm not saying there isn't going to be things that get built and developed that are going to create new roles. It's just this is happening so fast that the obvious benefits are coming more at the expense of jobs. And in the future, I'm guessing there's going to be productivity gains that we're going to start to identify, but it hasn't happened slow enough that we're able to sort of manage these two things at the same time.
listen, this is a big deal, and Benioff brought this out because his stock is under fire for not being able to drive AI value. And what he's showing here is that no, we are in fact driving AI value. And look at this. This would be a don't care if this happened outside of this. So if he got rid of 4,000 finance people, right? He doesn't do finance software, therefore it's not a big deal. Now I expect, and I think there was even conversations that he's going to reallocate many resources toward the sales motion, right? Which just completely makes sense. You and I have debated the speed of agentic changes, and until we have machines buying from machines, I do believe that you're going to need more people to be able to do this. I mean, what I'm seeing right now from automated marketing and sales is literally a 10x increase in my spam phone calls, spam emails, and completely out of touch pretend emails like they know what I actually do for a business. So to me, it makes sense here. But Mark and Benioff and Salesforce are under attack from horizontal agents that can do anything, and he had to flex his muscles to do this. This is classic Benioff.
Did you see the him kind of crapping on Palantir? Did you see the kind of go around? He went on Kramer and sort
I
of
did.
called out, and then I think, and then of course Alex Carr, being Alex Carr, made some comment about him being like the kid that was said, "I'm so nice in high school, but I don't understand why girls don't want to date me," or something like that. Like Carr's funny, man. He just doesn't
So
care.
personal.
It's
No.
gloves off with him all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
but Mark's kind of the same way. And so they're both kind of yammering back and forth. I mean, when it comes to enterprise AI, I think this is a really critical pivot for Salesforce. And I think they've obviously made a big pivot to agentic, but making that pivot while starting to turn off the old way of doing things is going to be the big risk it has to take. Right now,
Yeah.
it's doing the and thing. It's doing the, hey, here's agents and your traditional Salesforce. But it is really hard as a Salesforce customer. I mean, it is really hard to change. Like once you're on the platform, no matter whether you love it, hate it, it becomes really sticky, and it becomes this sort of brain center of the business. And they have that advantage of having tons of customers. But I do think the future, to your point, these kind of horizontal agents that are being powered by cloud providers, that are being built by platform type solutions, one sort of interface talking to all of your data seems like the future, not a bunch of different software. And so that's going to be the race that everybody's on. I think that's why Salesforce bought Informatica. They're trying to build those hooks into the broader data environment. So this will be one to watch. Pat, last thing here in the Decode before we jump on is Microsoft announces some broader access to AI tools for education and government. What's going on there?
Yeah, so a couple things going on at the same time. If you recall, when Trump came in and we had Doge, hey, we're going to make some cost cuts to technology. The first thought was, hey, we're using too much legacy technology. But second of all, we're paying consultants way too much money or SIs. But generally speaking, we're spending too much money for the tech that we have. And a couple weeks back, we saw what Google did in response to this. They come in, uh, cut deals, freebies for this, that, and the other. And here we have Microsoft coming out and pretty much doing the exact same thing. And this covers U.S. public sector, but also education. So free 365 personal for college students for 1 year. That includes Copilot. And then, some seriously, some cut prices for federal access to the latest AI capabilities. A lot of conversation about, your typical, privacy compliance bars, education, and in the government, right? Because this is cloud based. This is not, some on-prem type of thing. But this is really Microsoft playing the long game, right? To have a lock in of the public sector. And I think Microsoft so far has pretty much cleaned up in this space, and Google has been, looking for some table scraps, even though Workspace is highly competitive. I think what this does is this likely nulls or potentially limits Google's ability to go and take share here. If anything, gives a choice, I think, to different agencies, which will be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I think you hit this one on the head. I don't have really anything to add on this one. So, Pat, let's rock forward on this. One of the things you and I love to do is have a healthy debate. By the way, we do this privately. We do this publicly. We fight in public like a couple. We love to squabble. I usually say let's just take it out on the bench, but then Pat always says no for whatever reason. I don't know why you never want to do that with me. one of these days. One of these days. Right, buddy? You're going to do it? We're going to do it? No, we're not going to do it because we don't want to get injured anymore. We're old men, Pat. Put the ego aside and stay healthy. Keep your together. Healthy. You need to be able to hold that baby. You know, hold that baby. I hurt my wrist trying to kill a bug on a bleacher last week. So, like, we're old dudes. Like, we've got to get that through our heads, that being healthy. But here's something that's not healthy, in my opinion, is having almost 40% of your market covered by two companies. My God, what a terrible idea. That's a big problem, maybe. Is that really what I think? I don't know, Pat. But Nvidia, 39% of its revenue comes from two customers. And some of the market seems to think that is a bad idea. Is it a bad idea? Is it a problem that they have 39% tied up in two customers? Let's see. Maybe one of us can take that side. So, I mean, here we go. You know, you've got a company now trading at, over $4.4 trillion in market cap. And here they go reporting. And in the category that was most important to the business, they put up a puny amount of growth. I know I'm being a little bit sarcastic, but a rapidly declining growth rate and an increased concentration rate, with two of the customers now generating almost 39% of that revenue. Nvidia is in a difficult juxtaposition in terms of how they're going to go forward. They are basically now becoming incredibly dependent on companies that are building products inside of their shops to compete with them. This is a very simple one for me. You basically have a challenge where you've got an already declining growth rate in the GPU market. It's going to regulate at about 20% by the end of the decade. And yeah, sure, they were up by hundreds of percent a year or two ago, but that's not the case anymore. And now you look at Microsoft, you look at Meta, you look at their other, by the way, huge customers that get them closer to 50+% of all that revenue. You've got Google, you've got Amazon, you've got you go down the list, you got CoreWeave and all these companies. But of the biggest ones, Meta, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, guess what all of them are doing? They're all building their own competitive product. We already talked about this on the show. So if I were an investor, I would think that's a big problem for me if I'm already in at a price where they're at a $4.5 trillion with declining growth rates and with customers that are building products basically with the goal over time to replace Nvidia in their shops. And of course, here you go, coming out of left field just yesterday, CEO of Broadcom, Hock Tan, laid the wood, knocking the ball out of the park, announcing a new open AI custom chip. But that's just one of the chips they do, because they're already doing it for Google. And I'm pretty sure they're going to be taking Microsoft forward. Now they've got OpenAI. Oh, and they've got ByteDance, and they've got tons of other big cloud companies that are all saying, we want to vertically integrate. We want to increase our margins. We want to customize our own software. We want to control our fate. And we do not want our destiny to be in the hand of a company that's taking 73% of the margin out of every opportunity. Pat, this isn't even a debate. There's nothing to debate here. This is a problem. And if I'm an Nvidia investor, I am nervous. I am going to be running for the hills because only 5, 6 big customers to depend on being able to keep growing at this rate. Too much pressure, too unlikely. This CapEx is unsustainable. These companies want to get the R&D credits. They want to increase their margins. They're going to all go the Apple route. They're going to vertically integrate. And this means Nvidia's market share and growth is going to suffer.
Daniel, in a normal market, this might be an issue, but we're in a completely abnormal market. You have Nvidia that has all the leverage in this relationship. And the two companies we're talking about are Meta and Microsoft. And if I look at both those companies, their XPU hedge is behind everybody. I mean, my gosh, Microsoft made 64, made 120,000 Mayas for the entire year of 2025 estimate. And that compares to literally millions of NVIDIA GPUs, and even on the AMD side, that's running, close to a million. I mean, it's just crazy. So there's absolutely no leverage. And then if I look at what's going on at Meta, you have if I'm looking at least the CoWoS, their MTIA is selling well, but let's not forget, like the first MTIA was really a recommendation engine. That's all it did, right? And there's 4 different versions that are in market at the same time. And this MTIA version 3 will do 190,000 units this well. I mean, compared to Microsoft, it's a lot higher. And then when you add MTIA V1, 2, and V3, it just, it's a lot bigger, but still in comparison to GPU and Nvidia, it's just small. So the point I'm making is that Nvidia has all the leverage, so it's not a risk. It's not a risk at all. And then, at least on the Microsoft side, if I look at Azure AI, that's pretty much optimized for NVIDIA GPUs only. AMD GPUs are used extensively internally, a lot less for what I would call IaaS or PaaS services. So I think just looking at these facts, this is why I think this is very manageable for the next couple of years. Long term could be very different. And the other thing I want to look at, the final case I'm going to make is the market. Looking at Meta is absolutely an absolute juggernaut, right? They're in fact seem to be the biggest beneficiary of AI and how they've been able to monetize this. If we look at their recent earnings. So if they would decline, if Meta would decline, which they're not, that would be an issue. And then let's look at Microsoft, right? I think we all agree that Microsoft is the most balanced company out there, right? They've got a smaller consumer play, but when you look at their commercial play, that's really where it's at. So are them as a juggernaut going to stop anytime soon? I don't think so. I mean, barring some economic disaster that freezes business spending. So Nvidia holds all the cards, and these 2 companies are not going to slow down anytime soon. So that concentration risk, it's not even there, at least for the next few years. There we go. So what do you really think?
I don't think the concentration risk is real, but my reason's different. My reason is, by the way, that UBS report was great. Really, really great data on the chip quant and expectations. I think they're underestimating it based on our forecasts, but I do think the level of accuracy was really, really good. We'll have to see how that shapes up. Jensen's right about ASICs being canceled, delayed, but I don't think he's right about the idea that they'll never happen. I think they're going to happen. I think this is a existential thing for these companies, and they're going to do it. But I do think it's going to take longer, which is going to be a benefit to NVIDIA over the next few years. The biggest reason I don't think it's a problem is I still think the external workloads, the people building on small volumes and wanting to run AI in their enterprises are going to do it in the cloud. They're comfortable in CUDA and the developer environment of NVIDIA, and that basically the 5 or 6 biggest customers support like 5 million enterprises. And that's the big thing that I was really leaning on about why concentration is not an issue is they sell to the next 5 million companies. So everybody's using these clouds. It'd be one thing if they were buying it and only using it for their own reasons. I would be really worried about that because that's where I think the fall off comes, Pat, is those internal workloads definitely are going to get chopped off and they're going to go to the ASIC. But the external workloads, I think, stay with a lot of the enterprises. They're already building on NVIDIA. They're going to stay with NVIDIA. So my take, Pat, is it's really the scale is that this is really good channel distribution. They have a good channel. They have 5, 6, 7 companies that sell to 5 million more companies. And that, in my opinion, is good channel strategy. And so I think that is the reason it doesn't bother me at all.
Very good.
What do you think? How was my argument, though? Pretty good? Pretty compelling?
Yeah, it's something that, I think hopefully the audience recognizes and appreciates we come at these things from different angles. I know those uninformed people are like, oh, you people you're the same person. It's like, we are not the same person, and we have not completely different views ultimately, but we might have a lot of different reasons why we think of something.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. You heard it here first. All right, buddy. There was a busy market week. Things. It's been hot and cold. It's been up and down. There's been some economic data. There's been some new restrictions that are changing things. There's a couple of earnings out there, Pat. Why don't you and I break down what happened in markets this week? Bulls and Bears. Let's go. All right, Pat. Unemployment shooting up. The job and labor ads are crap. You heard about cuts. I mean, rate cuts coming, job cuts coming. What do you think about all the economic data that landed this week?
Daniel, I don't believe any of it anymore. And I think but by the way, unemployment data is probably more accurate than CPI or PPI because you've got unemployment checks, right? You've got things you have to file with a state or federal government. So I do buy into that. I mean, listen, if you want to take it at face value, right? Interest rates are too high. We need to cut interest rates immediately. And the interesting part is that unemployment rate hits as we're deporting a lot of people out of the country. So it's kind of the double whammy here. I do think that the tariffs are too good to be true, particularly for U.S. manufacturing, because you've got to find a new source for your brake pads or something like that, and that takes a long time. So yeah, Daniel, it's hard for me to take any of this at face value, but if we think that this is accurate, yes, the economy is in a slowdown, and we probably need an interest rate. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, my take on it all is just the average household. The average household is getting squeezed a little bit. High rates, the mobility of people is down. We're seeing it's never been a better time to rent and a worse time to own. That's because all that higher interest rates actually didn't break the pricing of the market that much. We did not see
Yeah.
housing prices come down that much. So there were a few bubbles where you saw meaningful declines. You certainly saw, like here in Austin, where there was like 50 sight unseen buyers paying cash at 50% over asking price. That's kind of gone away, but the prices have stayed really high here. So then on top of that, like I said, that 2% that people were getting 2 and 3% mortgages are now 7 and 8%. Car loans were 3-4%. Now they're 10%. Credit cards, when you add that difference to the little bit of interest dollars that now flow in, if that interest was reduced, you put a few hundred or a few $1,000s back in a household each month, each year. That money, one, gets generally probably spent back into the economy. We're not great savers. If there is savings, that's a good thing. But we're seeing people's savings decline. We're seeing increases in credit defaults and increased credit balances. People are leveraged more than ever before. So, I think we've already picked an economic strategy, which is growth to the hilt. And so if we're going to only go for growth on the macro level, we have to enable people to keep investing and spending and growing and moving into bigger houses and buying better cars. And, lower interest rates enable you to get more for your money. So it's the way you keep the market flowing. So that's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, if we look at the data too, I mean, education, health services gained, which, my gosh, how many administrators do we have to add to healthcare? Like, have you seen the disparity over the last 20 years between doctors and administrators? And the big losses were durable goods, right? That's manufacturing, business services, and the government, which, Doge came in. So it's very explainable. To me, I mean, listen, adding $46,000 jobs to education health services to me I see that as a red flag. Like somehow, anyways, I won't go down that rabbit hole. Durable goods and business services concerns me, not declines in the government, though. I think that's a positive.
Yeah. Yep. All right, let's jump into a few earnings here, Pat. We had Salesforce, HPE, Broadcom. Let's start with Salesforce.
Yeah, so in any normal time, I think the stock would have gone up, even though the forecast was a bit was a miss, just because of the 11% year-on-year revenue. But the challenge that plagues Salesforce essentially is that their AI number isn't big enough, right? When you've got companies like IBM you've got Cisco, you've got Nvidia, you've got Broadcom, just absolutely crushing it out there. And then you've got this, I'll call it the meme that won't go away. And by meme, I'm not saying it's not true. Is this idea that horizontal AI agents will reduce the upsell or the upcharge, or over the long term, reduce even the need to have certain enterprise SaaS uh, applications. So yeah, this was the issue. I mean, some standout stuff. I mean, data cloud, right? AI ARR up over $1.2 billion, up 120% year on year. The precursor to any of the AI magic tricks is data cloud. So that's a very positive thing. By the way, stock reaction right down 5 to 8% the day after. That was with a $2.6 billion buyback authorization, right? Sorry, $2.6 billion to shareholders, but the buyback went from 20 billion to I think 50 billion. And the stock going down, even with all of that malarkey, I think is not a good sign.
Yeah, this to me stays under the lane of, there's a fairly significant school of people that think SaaS is in big trouble. We think Salesforce can make the pivot, but it does have a lot of work to do to prove that it can make the pivot. It does have to be able to show that this agentic uh, investment that it's making is going to not only show growth, because it is, but it's also going to have to replace some of the revenue that will fall off. They have to be able to basically turn this into a well-oiled machine. Um, but again, they kind of came in. I think their guide was kind of in line. Um, their overall, I think they reaffirmed, but not upside. And this is one of those where it had kind of stabilized and run up a little bit into earnings. But this one's selling hard because it's one of those companies that people feel has a higher potential of being impacted by this SaaS software industrial complex pivot. We continue to think they will be okay for all the reasons I mentioned up top when we were talking about the stickiness, hard to move off of. But I do think that turn to agents, which they're making, and then of course turning to horizontal agents, which is going to be the second thing. It can't just be agents plus SaaS. It has to be agents as a enterprise-wide initiative, and their data cloud is going to have to be the data cloud to support it at scale, or else we're going to start to see those horizontal companies be more and more competitive and create more and more risk. So we like it, but there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of things to be proven there, so we'll have to keep an eye on that one. Another company that's done well and actually seen quite a bit of upside this year has been HPE. Now HPE, first of all, the Juniper deal was accretive in this quarter, so obviously part of it was accretive. So their numbers were a little harder to read through because you're looking at a number that includes some of Juniper in it. So I'm going to not talk too much about that part. I'm going to keep it a little bit at the high level about what I was looking for. HPE, Lenovo is a similar one, is playing in a very important area of AI, and that's the enterprise side. They have been very committed. And if you listen to CEO Antonio Neri talk to him this week, he's been very committed that they are not going to chase the bottom when it comes to servers. They're not going to be racing for the volume. They're going to win higher quality deals. And if there was one sort of thing that looked really good, but also creates, is all these companies selling AI servers are dealing with incredible margin pressure right now. It's like great for the top line, but at the expense of margin. They did a good job kind of holding down, but they too are seeing some pressure on their margins. I like HPE broadly as a play right now because I like how they fully stacked. I like what they've done, like in terms of having the network, having server, having their on-prem services, and then of course having a security angle as well. They are really thinking about the company, with a much more of a breadth approach. And this Juniper deal for them really did add a lot for that kind of future of on-prem hybrid enterprise AI environments. And if I'm, an investor and I'm thinking about the company, that's what I'm super encouraged by, is the fact that they really can start to stack the solutions. Getting that Juniper deal done was really important. The other metric that I really, really liked was I believe their ARR number is just absolutely screaming right now. They're up over 3 billion now. Remember, this was a 4 or 5 year promise. Everything as a service, 77% up from prior year, over 3 billion, and adding thousands of new customers on GreenLake. So if you kind of want to know if the hybrid AI, hybrid enterprise cloud story is still a thing, HPE is really zeroing in on this. And now, like I said, with their broader portfolio, their focus on networking and security at scale to go with what they're doing in compute. Um, Pretty optimistic about it.
Yeah, I thought they crushed it. Their stock was up $2, right?
Which is a huge move for them, by the way.
Yeah, it is. And then, the whole market is kind of sold off based on that. But they got that initial kicker, which I think they deserve. And I spent most of my time really researching the compute. It was great to catch up with CEO Antonio Neri, going to help understand this a lot better. And I really liked the AI systems revenue. I liked the backlog at $3.7 billion. And I think he really articulates sovereign cloud and enterprise demand really well. So they are seeing, and by the way, their brand in Western Europe is really good, right? They can really crush it there. I mean, the biggest challenge in Western Europe is the amount of companies who need this and are driving there. I think the tariffs and the friction between the U.S. and the EU actually will drive a ton of business for HPE. Yeah, the ARR of $3.1 billion on Greenlake, up 77%. Like, I'm just absolutely blown away like this. And if I have time, I might do this ARR creep percentage and whole dollars compared to what Cisco has been doing as they went through this. Like you, Daniel, what I think the most interesting thing about the company is its full software stack. I haven't seen a lot of evidence that the software layer is coming through and driving big benefits. But what I can tell you is that if you put these two networking entities together, they do have the potential to be the second to Cisco. I'm not saying they are there yet. I think the core switch is difficult. It's easier at the edge. It's a lot more difficult inside of the data center. But I'm very optimistic about what HPE is going to be able to do on the edge with networking.
And there we have it. One last earnings before we send everybody on their merry Monday or Tuesday or whatever day it is you're watching this way. Broadcom, Pat. Broadcom. Were you banging the table? I'm bloody.
See, I was, but it's so funny. I run out of gas. Like I make I'm like, Broadcom is going to absolutely crush it this year, and they do. And then I lose my luster to go and say, see, I told you so. But no, I mean, listen, I know that I know that people are crap talking the company. So actually, XPUs as a category, we talked about this. But if you look at Broadcom with Google, with Meta, with ByteDance, with OpenAI now, likely with Apple, likely SoftBank and ARM, that's just absolutely crushing it. And what I can tell you is that Broadcom doesn't do one-off deals, right? They won't do a deal that's just one quarter, or sorry, one product line, because they know that they can't make money on one, and they also know that typically the first go around is not going to be very good. And we have seen some, I'll call it teething pains with companies like Microsoft as an example, that it's been quite challenging. The other thing that they don't do is they don't do it without a ton of NRE up front. And they mentioned that on the call. They did receive payment for this mystery $10 billion customers out there. And lest we forget that AI data center net requires hardcore networking in addition to the compute. And they are driving on that as well. Good stuff coming out there on VMware. You and I talked about Explore Show. This company is literally firing on all cylinders. And I still don't think they're telling everybody about what they have in the bag and what they don't. Sorry, yeah, what things they have in the bag they haven't talked about.
Yeah, I mean, look, I do the math really simply. You know, 115 billion in custom AI chips by 29. We think Broadcom gets 80% of that revenue. So, they're at 5 billion a quarter now of AI chip and networking specifically. And so, we think there's a massive amount of upside from here for the company. And so we've been very clear. You heard my argument. It was simulated, but I meant everything I said about the growth of XPUs and what these large hyperscalers are going to do. And I think it's just getting started. And I think while we're seeing declining growth rates for GPUs, by the way, against a very large number, I'm not saying it's not a very large number. It is. You're going to actually see acceleration of growth rates against a smaller number, but people love a growth story. So the growth here is palpable. Broadcom is kind of wiping the floor, and you talk about a tale of two companies, and I like Marvell, but like Marvell just couldn't get out of its own way on its earnings call, and Hawk did he delivered a manifesto on how to basically say nothing and say everything about the partners and companies that they provide AI chip designs for. And remember, both these companies, but especially Broadcom, has full. It's not just the compute and the XPU part. It's also all the networking, which is a massive growth vector. It was the bigger growth vector for Nvidia this quarter. It's Broadcom's focused on open standards networking, and so if you're building an XPU or like I keep saying, maybe you're going to have an XPU with Broadcom partnered with ARM. It's going to have some custom IP in it. It'll be an ARM Broadcom CPU, XPU with some Intel Foundry work getting done to it. I mean, I'm just throwing some ideas out there. What could happen here? Probably be produced for OpenAI and maybe for Oracle down the line. And heck, this thing might even become one of the main inference chips for the Stargate project. Just ideas. I have no idea if this is true, but I like throwing these kinds of things out there. But there's a lot of growth out there for Broadcom. So, and by the way, Hawk is just an execution machine. He's like my hero. Like, if I could be like him, if I could hire like him, like, you freaking make your number when you work for Hawk Camp. There is no other way. You make your number and you execute. And he comes to every earnings just like, here's my numbers. I hit them all. Nothing missed. And by the way, here's a growth on the guide. Pat, this is going to be a $2 trillion company. Calling it. All right, that's it. Let's go. What a week. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us. Pat, thanks for doing this while on vacation. Go hold that baby. Go crush a workout. Try to not take too many calls. It is the Friday, and I think you're coming home tomorrow or Sunday. When are you coming home?
Tomorrow.
Yeah, so you're coming home. Like, try to do it one day. I mean, you've been a nightmare. You've been texting me, calling me, trying to work this whole week. I've been ignoring you. Don't take it personal. I'm trying to let you have a little vacation. But I really do appreciate you showing up today. I appreciate you, all of you, showing up, being part of our community, joining us for this show. 275 episodes in the bag. Waiting for that White House invite, so you all know what to do. Get us invited to the White House. We are the ones calling the balls and strikes when it comes to the future of AI. But for this show, this episode, for this Friday recording, for whatever day it is that you're listening, we have to say goodbye for now. See you all.